on a cold night in April of 1912, a relatively humble steamship began a series of events that would ultimately cause this ship to go down in the history books as Titanic's hero. On this episode of Never Stop Learning, we will be taking a look at the RMS Carpathia, her history, heroic rescue, as well as her tragic sinking. Built for the Cunard Line, RMS Carpathia was launched in 1902 at the Swan Hunter shipyard in Wallsend, England. Thea, as she was known, was a single funnel steamship at a modest length of 558 feet. She was powered by two quadruple expansion steam engines that powered two screws, giving the ship a maximum speed of 15½ knots. At a weight of 13,600 gross registered tons, she had a capacity for 2,550 passengers, split between three classes. She made her maiden voyage from Liverpool to Boston in May of 1903 and showed herself to be a reliable and capable ship by all who stepped aboard her. For 9 years, the ship and her crew led an uneventful existence, transporting passengers on various voyages. This was until April of 1912, while on a trip from New York to Austria-Hungary. Carpathia found herself in the middle of the Atlantic, surrounded by icebergs in frigid conditions. Aboard the ship, wireless telegraph operator Harold Cottam was getting ready for bed just after midnight. He put on his headset to listen to the wireless chatter before sleep when he heard a distress call from the unsinkable Titanic. What he heard chilled him to the bone. The ship had hit an iceberg and didn't have long. When the reality of this set in, he raced to the bridge. Unable to make the officer on watch respond fast enough, he raced to the captain's cabin and woke him. When Captain Arthur Rostron was told of the distress call from the Titanic, he immediately turned his ship around. As Carpathia was headed towards Titanic, Captain Rostron had the crew prepare the lifeboats and make ready the ship's medical supplies. The liner was going down roughly 58 miles from Carpathia's location, and Captain Rostron was sure that this would be a large rescue operation. When Carpathia arrived at the coordinates, the sight was heartbreaking. Titanic was gone, and with it, hundreds of lives. Carpathia's crew began to collect survivors from the lifeboats that dotted the area, and by daybreak, the crew were confident that they had rescued all survivors. When Carpathia returned to New York to drop off the survivors, her crew were labeled heroes, and Captain Rostron was honored with a host of awards. After the rescue, life aboard Carpathia slowly returned to normal as the start of World War I took the world's attention. During the war, Carpathia was used to ferry troops to Europe across the Atlantic, and she almost survived the conflict. Unfortunately, on the 17th of July, 1918, her luck had run out. Carpathia was carrying 166 crew and 57 passengers as part of a 17-ship convoy bound for Boston. The ships in the convoy followed a zigzag course to protect against submarine attack, but this protection wasn't absolute. If you've enjoyed this episode so far, please give us a like and subscribe to see everything else this channel has to offer. It was Gunner George Skinner on the aft deck who saw it first. A shadow below the surface of the water, followed by a white wake rapidly headed towards Carpathia. On the bridge, Captain William Prothero, in command since 1916, ordered the ship hard to port in an attempt to dodge the torpedo, but it was too late. The warhead made contact with Carpathia's port side, sending a shockwave throughout the ship. Before anyone could react, a second torpedo hit the engine room, leaving the ship dead in the water. Screams rang out across the ship as passengers ran for cover. Soldiers rushed on deck searching for the source of the attack, but there was no enemy vessel in sight. This attack was from a U-boat, Imperial Navy submarine SM-U-55 to be exact. Aboard Carpathia, Captain Prothero ordered a damage report as well as a distress call to be sent out. Across the ship, all passengers and crew headed to their assigned lifeboats as calmly as possible. The damage report came back and the news was grim. The engines were wrecked and the force of the explosion had disabled the wireless. Prothero ordered the crew to use signal flags to alert the other ships in the convoy to their situation and to have one of them send out a distress signal. He also gave the order to begin lowering the lifeboats. As the waters flooded in through the hole on the ship's port side, Carpathia began to list, but amazingly, she managed to keep from rolling over. This gave enough time for crew and passengers to make it safely into the lifeboats and away from the ship. Now, the only souls left aboard the ship were the captain, his first 3 ranking officers, as well as 2 gunners. The gunners kept a watchful eye on the waters around the ship as they knew the dangers that lurked just below the surface. Finally, Captain Prothero gave the order for the remaining crew to abandon ship and join the others in the lifeboats. All the passengers and crew could do now was wait, defenseless, afraid that at any moment the enemy sub would surface. Captain Prothero ordered the lifeboats into formation as all survivors prayed for rescue. For more than an hour, the passengers and crew waited. During this time, Carpathia remained stubbornly afloat. The humble ship would not go easily into the depths. Inside U-55, the Germans knew that help was not far off. Finally, a dark shadow emerged on Carpathia's port side and fired a final nail into the ship's watery coffin. The 3rd torpedo made contact behind the engine room with a tremendous explosion. Nothing could save her now. Water rushed in and her bow dipped below the surface, and soon she was gone forever. Huddled together, the survivors in the lifeboats watched as 3 Germans appeared on the conning tower of the U-boat. It appeared as though the men were preparing the sub's 2 6-inch guns. Captain Prothero felt his heart fill with dread. He looked around at all the terrified women and children in the lifeboats, innocent passengers and crew for whom he was responsible. His only hope was that the sub's commander was merciful. Then, out of nowhere, a distant boom, followed by a shell whistling overhead. The water erupted where the shell fell short of its target. Prothero looked to see a second shell almost make contact with the sub. The Germans scrambled back into the sub as it quickly began to dive. Within no time at all, Prothero recognized the ship approaching. It was HMS Snowdrop, his savior, a Navy minesweeper. The ship rushed past the group of lifeboats and began dropping depth charges in wide circles where U-55 had disappeared. Her crew hunted relentlessly for over an hour before being certain that the enemy had retreated. Only then did she stop to collect the survivors. All 280 survivors were brought aboard safely, but in the end, 5 crew never made it to the lifeboats. They were either killed in the explosion or drowned below deck in the ship. Thanks for watching this episode of Never Stop Learning. If you've enjoyed it, please give us a like, as it really helps new people find these videos. Also, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and check out all of our other maritime disasters. Until next time.